Katie White and he and I are here for a special episode today. Intuitive foreplay is really about getting the juices flowing with your own intuitive expansion and kind of where you're being invited into your own discernment, like refined discernment into your own clarity, your own truth, your own knowing. So allow sensation that comes forward in the physical body and your emotions, etc., as we talk and channel today to open up whatever it opens up within you. So today we're going to be talking about this concept of collective energy. And we started talking about this a teeny bit in our last episode where we were talking about energy that isn't yours, right? And like asking what is yours and what is not. And we tend to not go there. We tend to immediately assume that there's something wrong with us, or that there's something going on with us, or there's something we need to process, or something like that, right? And really, it's so important for us to pause and identify how much of this is actually ours, because your field knows what to do with your own energy. But we want to talk about being in relationship with mass consciousness because that is something that we are all part of. We are all part of collective consciousness, and how to navigate it and kind of hold our own vibration despite the pressure we might feel from the collective. So, hi, Katie. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Katie's internet was a teeny bit glitchy, which is why we're a few minutes late. So, if she's a little pausy, just be patient because we can still hear her, but she seems nice and clear now.
Let's hope.
Yeah, nice and clear. Okay. So one of that's really the first thing that we wanted to bring forward was this concept of like, is this yours? Right? Is this energy yours when you're feeling an emotion that's obviously not, you're not going to tune into this for every fleeting emotion. You'll make yourself crazy. But you're going to tune into this for sustained emotion, particularly because emotion is really it's energy and motion, right? And it's meant to just move through us. And the average person has 21 mood changes a day. And this energy is supposed to move through us within about 90 seconds without being held. But we end up holding on to it with the mind and with the nervous system. So I think the first thing is like, is this even mine? Because especially if you're on the spiritual path and you're somebody who has kind of raised their hand in service of channeling divine energy, you're going to be feeling some of this collective energy, right? And you're going to be receiving energy from the divine that is meant to inform those around you. So that's why we just say one simple technique is just like, hey, is this mine? And assuming that yes, you are channeling for the collective. You might also be channeling for yourself as well. Of course, if it's coming through you, it's also for you. But we're all connected to the collective consciousness. There is one consciousness that we all deposit into and pull from. And so it's recognizing your role in that at the same time that you don't take it on entirely as yours and taking it personally. So what do you do when this energy comes up for you and you recognize it, Katie?
Yeah, so for me when the emotion feels like, okay, I've cried it out, I've moved it, it's still here, right? Like those are usually like my first kind those are my first kind of things that I do with it. I just kind of like, okay, do I need to cry? Like or sometimes the crying, right? The tears just start flowing. Um and then I'll move it, right? Like maybe that's doing energy work, maybe that's intuitively dancing, maybe that's doing somatic movements, qigong. Like there's a thousand ways that you can move it, right? Chanting. Um, but if it's still staying there, or I find that if it's like another day has gone by and I'm still feeling this, I'm like, okay, is this even mine? And it's that very simple question of like, is this even mine? What do I need to know about it? And just really allowing, like, for me, when I ask that question, I sit in silence. I sit in stillness and I just allow the sensation to be felt wherever in my body. And then for me, I like play with it. Like
Mhm.
I mean, you guys have watched us channel, right? Like you've seen how I move energy, right? That's how I end up playing with it. And oftentimes it's exactly as you just said too, like what do I need from this, right? And what is that message that comes forward? And inevitably, like the next conversation I have, it's like, oh, that message, right? Like that's the message that needed to come through. And then through that conversation, you and I do this all the time together, right? Through that conversation, we're like, oh, as I'm helping you and talking it out for you, I feel it too, and like I receive that healing back. So it's like this reciprocal exchange that
Mhm.
happens. So yeah, for me, I get still and I allow myself to really feel it and just drop in and say, is this mine? Is this part of mass consciousness? And I think the other thing that I notice is like when it feels really dense and heavy, like that's usually a signal to me that's like, I don't think this is mine, right?
Mm.
Because um or solely mine and solely my activation, right? It's like
Mhm.
I feel like when it's a lot of like fear and doubt and like when I'm lacking trust is
Yes.
when I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I picked something up somewhere, right? There's
Mhm.
something that wants to come through me because all of the ultimately, Laura, I think it comes down to like when we end up playing life small.
Mhm.
Because I really feel like that's when we tend to like we stop like just see this like thing compressing down, like compressing our energy down. So when I start to feel those heavier, denser emotions of the fear, the doubt, the mistrust, the playing life small, I'm like, oh, okay, where have I stopped trusting the divine? Where have I stopped trusting, right?
Right, and really just become attached to the collective narrative. Right.
Correct, right? Because I think the 3D collective kind of puts us in this box that's like, don't take risks. You have to be afraid. Don't live your truth. Like, I think there's a lot of that. And so when those dense feelings come through for those of us that have chosen to channel light, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. There's just this purging coming up. This isn't all just mine.
Yeah, and I find that in, like, sticky nervous system patterns a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot I mean, you think about it with the nervous system, I mean, that's going back to, like, when we were cavemen, and, like, really in just survival mode, and I think
Yeah.
it really comes from there, from a collective perspective, so when the fear, doubt, lack of trust, 100%. I feel like that's a real signal for me, and I think that for me, when I'm in this space of kind of I don't want to say clearing mass consciousness because I'm part of it, but like
Right.
recognizing it or at least acknowledging that could be present. For me, it's not about like for me, it's just about being with the energy and almost like being in reverence of it and honoring it.
Mm.
So like I find that as soon as I connect to how much of this is mine, right? I
Mhm.
don't even ask, is this mine? Ask how much is mine? Because I know there's a percentage that's mine,
Of
right? Or
course.
else it
Yeah.
wouldn't be coming through me. It would be coming through you or somebody else, right?
Yep.
And so for me, it's like, okay, how much of this is mine? And then I kind of take what isn't, and I'll either put it in a bubble or you can put it in like a little fire. You can have like little fires in your aura, put it in there, but I don't like to do that. I like to kind of put it in like a little bubble and almost like hold space for it temporarily and just kind of like honor it
Hold it.
and
Mhm.
its presence and just being present with it. And then I allow it to be directed by source. I kind of offer it to source as an offering because it doesn't belong to me, right?
Right.
This is all orchestrated by source. And so it's really this, it's almost like this energetic gift that I don't even need to have understanding of it. Sometimes, like you said, that understanding will come later on, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I have clarity on that. But it's not necessary for me. Like for me, it's just like, okay, this is an energy that I'm just going to offer back to source or just lift up to source. And that is really lightening for my own field, but it's also really beautiful because I witness like these particles of energy kind of moving up into the collective consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of fueling and informing that space, that energetic vibrational space even more. And it feels like a really beautiful exchange like you were talking about just in a different way, right? It's a really beautiful exchange. And so that's what I do in terms of kind of like clearing collective energy, but I also then after I release it I kind of stay in reverence for the fact that I've accepted and received and been offered this opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And at that point that I just kind of give a little space to allow my role to be moved, shifted, forwarded, however it needs to be able to contribute to the expansion of mass consciousness. And that could be sharing it, and it could be just shutting my ass up and being by myself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and just taking full responsibility for me. because I think that's one of the things that I notice happens a lot with people is that there can be a tendency for over responsibility for the mass consciousness stuff that comes in. And I think when we get into that, oh, well, I have to clear this collective for the collective, or this is coming for the collective, I need to share this for the collective. It's a distraction from the awareness of yourself as a creator, that you are creating codes
Right.
within mass consciousness, right? Like, and as soon as you have that, and that's how I feel, I guess I feel this like responsibility when I'm in recognition of being in awareness of when mass consciousness is here, and allowing it to be here, allowing it to move in whatever way it desires, and then intentionally depositing it, right? Intentionally depositing it back into the collective grid. Because I feel like we end up almost feeling like victims of mass consciousness a lot of the time. I think a lot of people do.
I was just gonna say that, right? Like how you give it space at kind.
Oh, she disappeared. She'll be back. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I was thinking was like this concept of we can take on this over responsibility. Well, I have to fix this. We don't need to fix anything for mass consciousness. Like we don't need to fix anything. We're not in a fixing role. We're not in a saving role for mass consciousness, right? We're in a, hey, I'm being in allowance of what's present. I'm recognizing its source. I'm returning it to its source. And I'm choosing to be in the space of creatorship around this exchange of mass consciousness. What were you going to say? Do you remember?
Uh, not really.
Katie's ready to punch her internet in the face. So we're just going to give her a second to clear that. All right. So yeah, just breathe. So yeah, so that's one of the things I wanted to say, because this is what I think when we talk about navigating collective consciousness and being in relationship with it, what we need to realize is that we get to deposit and we get to receive, right? All the work that I'm doing for myself is imprinting onto mass consciousness, is becoming new awarenesses that I have about myself, about how the divine is moving through me, about how I interact in this human world, about how I deliver as a service provider, right? All of these things get deposited as codes into mass consciousness. So anybody on this planet gets to, when they need that code, access it if they have the awareness. And so that's, I think, what's so important for people to realize is that when you feel like you're in a space of stickiness, of stuckness, of heaviness, like Katie was talking about, it's like we have this huge arsenal of energetic data that we get to pull from, and we get to bring those codes in and allow them to nourish us and fuel us and open us and activate us and remind us that not only are we creators and offering this, but we get to receive from that space too. Right. And we might not understand this fully on a conscious level, but we do so energetically. We can feel it.
Yeah. I think that's what I was going to say around like the victimhood, right? Like giving that space at kind of the end, right? Well, first off, the shift of saying, instead of saying, is this mine? How much is mine? Right? Like that right there begins to allow you to receive in what
Mhm.
is meant for you, right? But then that victimhood of just giving that space kind of at the end, and like that's what I do typically in like that stillness. It's like giving it back up to the grid, right? Like and then that's where it feels like of the greatest service, and we step out of that victimhood of like, why is this happening to me? Why am I the chosen one? Why do I have to do this? Right? There's a lot of that.
Mm,
um and it's okay to have those temper tantrums, right? Like, "Ugh, why me?" Right? But then it's also like pull down those codes like you were talking about, like plug into that universal life force energy that is abundant and infinite, right? Like
mhm.
it's always there for us to connect into. We it's not what we were taught, right? But it's what we are here to do.
Right. And it's just like you talked about with doubt and lack of trust earlier. It's
Mhm.
like, you think nobody else on this planet has felt that? It's like tap into the grid, like
Right.
where there's infinite possibility. There's somebody who's worked through that. There's somebody who's worked through that in the exact instance that you've been in. I guarantee it. There's 7 billion people on this planet, right?
Yeah.
And right now we're talking about collective planetary consciousness, right? Like people who have walked this earth not just now, but all throughout the course of time.
Right.
There's also universal consciousness, oneness, right? That exists even further beyond that. And so it's you have multiple grids to tap into. You can tap into the planet, you can tap into your own, you can tap into the consciousness of your lineage, right? You can tap into the consciousness of your soul's lineage. You can tap into the consciousness of the universal, right? And so it's just recognizing that these resources are available and getting curious, and allowing yourself to be light around it. And I think that sometimes when I feel the heaviness, like you were talking about earlier, as soon as I feel the heaviness, well, I shouldn't say as soon as every single time because I'm a human and sometimes I don't freaking remember in the moment, but I eventually get to it. Is this remembrance that I am a channel, right? That we are all a channel for divine energy if we decide to allow the divine to come into embodiment within us. And I recognize that when that heaviness is here, there's something that desires to come through. And so also being curious about that and being like, okay, I don't need to make this about the mind or the body or whatever's
Right.
going on that's heavy around me and create any meaning around it and just recognize it as, yeah, this might feel like energetic pressure. And you can feel that pressure from mass consciousness, if that's what you think it is. Does it really matter where the pressure is coming from? Not necessarily. I think that what it's helpful to do is to recognize that the heaviness is an energy,
Right.
right? And so it's like, okay, let me invite the energy in. Just like we talked about with fear. It's like, don't dismiss it, reject it, run away from it, right? Instead, turn toward it and get curious and allow it to soften in the presence of being accepted and allowed. Same thing with heaviness. So it's like, okay, what is this energy that's coming in? And typically when that happens, it's going to be a big energy that is coming
Yeah.
in to be of service to share with the collective as medicine for the collective.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you're bringing up like that pressure, right? Like when it starts to feel like that, it's like that's when I feel like I end up sinking into I am a channel, right? And like
Mhm.
that gets us out of that victimhood, and that helps us remember who we are and where we like what we're a part of.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's why when we take over responsibility for trying to fix all this stuff in mass consciousness, we're really abdicating our responsibility to just be a channel for the
Correct.
energy, right?
Correct.
Because yeah, it's like, I mean, I wasn't feeling great over the weekend. I wasn't feeling great the last couple of days. Just had something that's moving through me, and I just said yesterday, I was just like, I just know I need to channel. I just know I
Hmm.
need to channel. Like, you can say it's sickness, you can say it's a virus, you can say it's this, you can say it's that, you can say it's hormones, you get whatever the hell you want to say it is, right? Yeah, great. Okay, yes. It's not that that's not a reality, but that's also energy, right? Like,
Right.
it's also all energy. And so for me, I'm like, I know I just need to channel. And sometimes I'll kick that can down the road a little bit. And then I'm like, Laura Mazada, why did you wait on this, right? Like, you know what
Yeah.
this is, but that's the human pendulum swing, right? And the duality of it. But it's yeah, when we fully take responsibility for, oh, this energy is coming through me, right? This energy is asking to be welcomed through me. And as soon as I do that channel, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing, right? I
Yeah.
feel amazing. And it's really beautiful how we can come into relationship with being acknowledging and appreciative of our own vibration at the same time that we can feel this pressure and this impact of mass consciousness. And that's where the intuitive discernment comes in, right? Of like you were saying, like the steps that you shared earlier in terms of being able to identify, how much of this is mine, and I get to move my own energy, like you shared some of those tools that you use. I get to move my own energy, but then I get to sit in reverence and with this energy as well. It's both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You get to do both, and still anchor your vibe in this body and this incarnation at the same time that you're honoring the larger energy and recognizing that they exchange.
Exactly. And I exactly. And as you're like sitting and doing that connection and that channeling, right? It's that by channeling and tapping into the divine, you unplug in a way to like what's happening here, right? And like
Yeah.
all of the systems and the fears that come up, right? And you're getting that purity, and that purity runs through you, and like that's part of the exchange, right? Like it just it it's like instead of plugging in like to the beliefs and systems here, plug into the divine, right? And let that
Mhm.
purity to run through, and that's where that reciprocation, that um exchange that we're talking about, and unplugging from that mass consciousness is going to start to really flow because you're tapping into this creative love, soul satisfying like life force, right?
So funny what you're saying because I love this because you're talking about unplugging from that mass consciousness where actually what you're doing is I love this clarity, right? You're unplugging from the mind and the nervous system's attachment to mass consciousness as you define it as a human, but you're actually plugging into the pure source of mass consciousness, right?
Right?
Like the core energy of it. And so it's like,
Yes.
yeah, you're unplugging as as a human construct, but you're actually plugging into the purity. And I think some people can feel like this is where the concept of spiritual bypassing comes in, which we've
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
before. And this is where we say, no, 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 no. It's not like we're doing this for the rest of our lives and completely abdicating the human. It's like we said a little bit ago, you're holding both, right? And that's the practice is to be tethered in this human body while you consciously and nervous system wise unplug from the human construct of mass consciousness and pull into the human body the embodiment of purity from the source of this consciousness, right,
Yeah.
without all the distortions of all the narratives and all of that and the beliefs like you were talking about.
I was just going to say it's closing down those distortions, right? It's
Right, and Will is saying here intentional direction of consciousness, which is interesting because I think yes, to a degree in terms of our choice when we're tapping into the purity, right? We get to choose to open that channel and to detach in this channel,
yep,
meaning the human construct. But we then are in allowance of the consciousness to move through us.
through us, right?
Because if we get too intentional about directing that, then we're bossing the universe around, right? We're bossing source around. Go ahead and try, it's like go ahead and try, but it's like really we want to come into allowance, right? So it's like, yes, I'm going to be an intentional choice and decision making around opening this up and where I plug in and where I choose to detach in this incarnation, right? So that allowance can flow.
I love that point. You're right. It is more of that allowance.
Yeah, and then as that allowance comes in, then you'll feel also another level of pressure or urging from your soul to share and direct, but it's from this space of being moved
Yep.
rather than moving it.
And it's not reactive.
Yes. Mm.
Yeah. That right. That and it
Which is where the
feels
victim mindset comes in.
right. It feels totally different. And that's where tuning into the sensation is so important, right? Because when you can have that discernment on what it feels like, it makes it so much easier and faster to just to be in that allowance ultimately, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I just want to touch base with this quickly, and then I think we want to send some energy to the collective and just see what collective. Because I mean, dudes, channel collective consciousness, channel the universal consciousness, channel like these are frequencies that are available for you to channel. But I just want to honor and acknowledge like my own tantrums around this, of
Yeah.
like there's many times that I'm just like, I don't want to be a leader. Like I don't want to do that, like I don't want to be a
Hmm.
because as your awareness heightens, you do feel more. You do see more
Hmm.
as you open to bringing in these higher frequency energies and you really practice this more and more and invite in more of these energies, bigger energies will come. Like as your capacity expands, bigger energies will come. And sometimes you're just like, I don't wanna, and that's okay. Have your tantrum because you're always going to come back into clarity of how much this fuels you and nourishes you and activates you,
Yeah.
right? And honestly, the ease of holding the duality becomes easier. It really
And that
does become easier. I
and
mean,
that's what we were talking about last week, which is why we started that where we were like, we need to have a whole episode on just
yeah,
this. Yeah.
and it does. It becomes easier, and it's like I say that, and I'm like, especially after I've been through a few days of like not feeling great, and I'm like, is it easier? And it
Is
and
it
it is because the awareness comes faster.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been playing with the whole world, the whole word, ease and easy. Like, I don't know if I truly believe that anything in life is easy or there's an ease to it. I believe that it's like I've been playing with that sensation of like, well, what does ease even feel like in my body? Right. And for me, it doesn't like, because to your point, right? I want to keep expanding. I want to expand my capacity to hold more. I want to be this channel. I want to be this leader. Right. But it does not make my life easier.
I feel like ease is, when I think about it, I'm like, what is it you, why do you want it? Like, why do we want ease? And I
I
feel like
think,
to me, a lot of that is relief.
yeah.
We want relief and we want relief from the pressure. And so I think that could be something similar to what Will was talking about earlier here around intentional direction of consciousness. It's like, you know, when we recognize it and we're able to kind of channel it and move it as the energy comes into our bodies, like our energy, right? And use it as a channel and this exchange with universal consciousness, then I think we feel less of that pressure that requires ease to arrive. Because when
Mhm.
you're in connection with source and you're allowing it to guide you, are you really thinking about ease? Like, I'm not thinking about ease, I just am.
Well, right. Like, I guess that's my point. My human doesn't really feel ease around it, right? It's just
Got it.
is this like this to yeah, to your point, like when you're in that space, it's just being. It just is. And so when we try to put labels on it for the
Mhm.
human, like easy, I think that's when I fall into some of my temper tantrums and like victim is where I'm like, "Oh, why me?" Right? Like because
Mhm.
this is supposed to be easy, right? Like if I'm tapped in and plugged in to the divine and following my soul's path, that it's going to be easy and it's going to bring me tons of ease,
Got it.
right? You
It's
know?
almost like attachment to outcome energy. Like, well, I'm
Yes.
doing this so that so things feel easier. And
Right.
it's like, that's not the point.
That's not
No,
the
no, no.
point.
We don't sign up to be in service so that things feel easy all the time. And I'm really glad you brought that forward because I actually think that's a huge misconception,
I,
especially in the coaching industry. It's like, oh, well, if you bring in the divine, everything's easy. And it's like, dude, not really. Like,
It's exactly that, like, I started reading some posts and, like, j and I was like, "Why is this activating me?" And that was my invitation. I was like, "Why do I don't believe it." Right? Like, there was something in me that was, like, swirling, and I was like, "Oh my god, maybe simple, but not necessarily easy." Right.
mhm,
Like, yeah, I was like, "Ooh, there is something there that I don't believe." I don't believe that tapping that right, like coaches say, like, and I'm sure I've said it, right? Tapping into the
mhm.
divine. Like your life is going to become so much more easy and it's and I was like, "Oh my god, I actually don't believe that." Right?
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, my clarity is easier. Like,
Yep.
there are some areas that I'm like, yeah, my confidence is easier. My return to baseline or to my foundational core is easier. Like, yes, there are some things that have tangibly become easier. But yeah, I love that because I just think that's the piece is not attaching to the concept of ease.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
because then we define it's kind of like we define what it needs to look like. And it's
Yeah.
like I,
Or
life
feel
is
like.
always going to have its challenges. It's always going to have these densities. It's always like it's always going to have that. But
Mhm.
if you define your life as looking easy or being easeful, right? Is that even a word? I don't know. Right?
I
But
use it
like
all the time.
but then something comes up or you have there's something I don't know, like there's a thousand examples that we could give, right? Something catastrophic happens in your life and you're like, "What the fuck? It's not easy anymore." Like and you have to work through like even my internet today. Like that's fucking annoying is all shit, right? I'm pissed. And it's
Mhm.
like I'm sitting here trying to create this easy life. My internet's not working. That's making it so I can't get my words right. Like there's so much that, but those are all stories that we build up in the mind. And so,
Mhm.
what would it look like to invite just being and being like, okay, well, that happened. I wasn't meant to say that. Laura took right. Like, what would it look like?
Unattached. It's not
Yeah.
attaching.
Yep.
Mhm,
Yeah,
and just
it's
it
been
comes back
something
to
I've
that
been
allowing.
well, exactly, right? That's kind of just what I've been playing with. Like, I realized that I was being activated, and I was like, okay, what invitation am I being invited to right now? And yeah, it's that unattachment and stepping into the allowance and that reverence ultimately, just being.
Yeah.
I think that's where that simplicity comes out too, right? And you and I
Mhm.
have had so many conversations around simplicity.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think thank you, Will, for sharing that because I think that's really supportive around it is actually a very simple concept,
Yeah.
right, to tap into source, but it's not necessarily easy to do
Right.
that as human beings, to
Right.
make that choice consistently, repeatedly. It's a devotion. It's a
Yes.
devotional practice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think let me just let's start to channel. I'm feeling
I was
like
gonna
this
say my
energy
arm is
coming in.
like, yeah,
I
my
just
arm
feel it
is
coming through me.
numb.
'Cause I have other thoughts that were coming through, but I just feel like this movement of energy is more important right now. So let's just move it and just see what comes through. We're gonna channel into the collect we're gonna tap into the collective consciousness. If anybody here wants to join us in that and just feel into this and bring forward anything that's coming forward, we can allow this to be a collective channel and allow yourself if you're in a space where you just want to receive today, just receive. Take a nice deep breath in. Allow any tension in the body to release and relax. It's just this language around the we are we consciousness, you know? I am you are me, we are all. Mm.
It's like this infinite ribbon.
Mm. Which brings that like you're never alone kind of sensation within the
Mhm.
human body, always connected, tapped in, always a wave of energy to ride.
Yeah.
As your discernment sharpens, you get to be consciously choosing of your wave that you ride. Also interesting, they're bringing forward like there's multiple frequencies within the frequency of oneness, right? It's the combination of all frequencies. So it's
Mm.
just recognizing the spectrum of sensation and feeling that comes through for you as well. Like, sadness is on the same spectrum as happiness. Allowing yourself to kind of slide up and down along these frequencies, knowing that you're still on this same ribbon of oneness and they're saying like stop analyzing it, just be.
Mhm.
Like just be. It's like being in full allowance of what is, all layers of you that are coming towards you, that are coming through you. Like Michael Singer in his book The Surrender Experiment. It's like I am willing to be in allowance of anything that arrives to me, for me, through me, with me, without just being a passive participant in receptivity. Being demonstrative about what moves you. Because some energies are going to move you and some energies are not going to move you. And it's going to be different from somebody else. So it doesn't mean that you're just in this passive role when allowance of energy comes through you. It's coming through the discernment of the sensation in your body and your intuitive knowing. That's where the co-creation arrives. That's where your creatorship comes into play. And again, don't focus on the words we're bringing through, just focus on what you feel from the energy. That's what's most important. It's really a forwarding of the third eye. That's what's happening right now. Just forwarding the third eye energy, making it more prominent, more visible, more tangible. But being really soft and delicate with it. Very tender part of who you are, very sacred. That's why a lot of this heaviness that can come through in whatever form can feel aversive because there's such a tenderness within the third eye with this clear discernment sometimes. It can almost feel like a raw wound when energy, heavy energy, comes in upon it or through it. So let's just practice holding that third eye's openness, tenderness, discernment, clear edges as these larger frequencies arrive within the field. This is why allowing the exchange of energy and allowing energy to move through you and be given through you is so important, because this energy from the third eye, as the heaviness comes in, as you're holding the stability of this, it travels down through the neck, the shoulders, and out through the arms and the hands. Otherwise, it can get trapped up, particularly in this neck and shoulder area, in terms of eye strain, headaches, jaw tension, neck and shoulder tension. Allow it to flow through the hands. Move the hands however you desire. Place them wherever you desire. Anchoring a thread of this third eye energy, a cord into the base of the spine. Is that what you were doing too?
Exactly what I was doing.
Just tethering it. So it does have a place to land in the human. We're creating 3D space for it. Not negating that role of the human experience. Just fortifying our container. And see, in that, I feel this easeful breath. When we talk about ease, I feel an easeful breath moving up and down the spine. I feel an opening and a widening of my channel. And that's where the ease is coming forward for me, as well as like this. It's a remembrance. It's a remembrance of my soul's frequency. Allowing it to be a space for us to rest, to be held, to be shifted, alchemized, transformed, expanded, clarified. Feels like it's starting to complete for me. Mm. Let's come forward for you, Katie.
Um, everything that you were saying was, of course, right in line with the energy I
Mm.
was feeling. So, yeah, I was feeling like it's funny. I felt like the duality a little bit, right? Where I felt like the stillness and you felt like the movement, right?
Mm. Mm. Which right there is a beautiful reflection of what our discussion was.
Yep.
Recognizing that as you're in movement, somebody else in the collective consciousness is in stillness.
Yep.
As you're in stillness, somebody else is in movement, and this is how we own a responsibility for our role in that, right? Is just allowing that movement of where the energy is desiring to present within us,
Yeah.
through us,
Yeah.
to serve our role. Mm. Thank you, everybody, for receiving this and
Mm.
being here for this discussion.
Thank you.
Hmm. This is our last episode of Intuitive Foreplay for a while. Lots of vacations and prep time in August for our retreat that's coming up in September. So we actually just did a huge energetic shift and upgrade and refinement around the retreat. So we're going to drop that link here on the replay so that you guys can read more about it and come into in-person community to move energy like this, to be present and discerning about what's coming up in each moment over the course of the 4 days, and just creating a lot of space and intimacy and reverence for how your human is moving and presenting these energies.
And for all of it, for all of you, right? Like all the
Yeah.
pieces of you. And yeah, just inviting all of you to be there present.
Yeah, all layers of yourself.
Hmm.
Hmm. And holding that with
Right.
appreciation.
Because
So
that's
we'll drop
ultimately
that
how
link.
you come into mastery of you, right? Of yourself.
Oh,
And
yeah, right, exactly, is to welcome all aspects of yourself forward, which is, I mean, exactly what we're talking about here with collective consciousness, welcoming
yeah.
all aspects of the energy that's presented forward, like just allowing whatever is meant to arrive and being with it with compassion and grace and um, momentum, really.
Just
Yeah.
gonna say momentum. Yeah.
Yay! All right, friends. On that note, we are going to close for today. Thank you so much for being here, mwah, for being part of this community, and we will see you very soon. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.